Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about the phenomenon, because it's I think more widespread now than it's ever been, of people who are being over promoted into various roles in the workplace. Now, what happens when the boss, if you like, is less qualified than the people that report to them? What happens there? How does this underqualified, overpromoted boss assert their authority? And this is really the essence of the essay that I'd like to talk about. Now, I've seen this happen a few times, or many times, in fact, and I guess I was sort of brought through business and having to prove myself every step of the way. You had to sort of go through a series of promotions. You were, put in charge of a situation and took responsibility for that. Then you were put in charge of a situation that also had people reporting to you. Then you sort of moved up another notch and so on until you became the executive VP or CEO or whatever. So I had to work through the thing there. So at any time, I don't recall, maybe in the very early days, in my early 20s, even then briefly, I don't recall any time when I felt that the people who were reporting to me or who were around me were better qualified than I was. And there's a natural authority that comes from being the best qualified in the group, and qualified through experience and credentials, qualifications, and particularly achievements. And so that gives you a natural authority and also a natural confidence and self-assurance. You know what you're talking about. You've done it before. You can give direction and say, okay, well, it didn't work this time, Billy Bob, but if you put your left hand over your right hand and do this and do that, then it'll work out. So you can give guidance and direction and help to the people that you boss of or that report to you. And again, that gives you, and also that gives them a natural confidence that you know what you're doing and that you can give them that advice and that guidance. They also know that when you judge them, that you're judging from a position, as in, say, an annual appraisal or something like that. You're judging them from a position of how to do the job, what challenges are presented by having to do the job, and you understand what's needed to get the job done. That means you're in a much better position to write appraisals and to do employee evaluations and so on. Now, outside of that, let's look at a situation where the person promoted has no achievements and minimal, if any, qualifications for doing the job. Maybe they've got some sort of a certification and that's used. But increasingly, we're moving into a world where people aren't required to make decisions or do things or anything other than the absolute executive level of management. And for most people, including doctors and vets and all sorts of jobs now, they're just doing it off a checklist. So they're given a checklist and they don't deviate from the checklist, and they don't know what to do if the sequence of points on the checklist, if the reality is different from the checklist, they're screwed. They're fucked. They don't know what to do because they have no expertise, no experience, and they haven't achieved anything in their own right. Because when you're just going off a checklist, you're not actually achieving anything. You're just doing what you're told to do and just going off the checklist and ticking a box as you go down the page. So people are being promoted for ideological reasons. They're a black lesbian or they're brown this or they're race and gender quota, or they're viewed as being people that are easy to get on with, or people that won't ask questions, or whatever the reason. But they're being promoted for other than achievements and qualifications and capacities and abilities and intelligence, all the things that hitherto would make up the reasons why somebody would be promoted. And going back again to sort of earlier in my working life, there were times when I queried why some people were promoted. I remember that. I'm just thinking one now is this guy who I didn't think really had the achievements to warrant his promotion, and he kind of was like a peer of mine, I suppose, in another department. But the reality was he had a much higher intelligence. He had a natural intelligence. He had a higher IQ, and he had a real ability to think through complex issues. And even though he was lacking a bit in the achievements and experience side, he kind of made up for that in just the raw intellect of the guy. And so there are things that sort of separates. Gee, that guy, he's a bright guy. Let's do something with him. And the timing was right, and that sort of thing. So he got the nod for that promotion. And even as a young guy, as I thought about it, I thought, no, he actually is pretty good. And if he didn't know something, he'd come and ask, and things like that, which made a difference. And he had confidence in his intellectual capacity to solve the problem and work his way through it, which made him, I think, quite a good choice for that role that he was promoted into, even though he was missing, as I say, some other things. So sometimes you look at people in their totality and they may be missing A and B, but they've got more in C and D, and so that kind of balances out, and those decisions also were made. Nonetheless, the guy still was capable in the totality of what he brought to the table. This has changed now. There's certainly the people, I'm aghast at the piss poor quality of upper middle and lower executive management, and executive management too. I mean, they're all flunkies and stooges from the big banks these days, anyway. But some of the people I'm meeting, I mean, you wouldn't get them to sweep the floor or wipe your ass or something. I mean, they're that unqualified. It's embarrassing. I mean, acutely embarrassing. Yeah. And clearly, the opportunities are there. These people are being promoted over the heads of tens of thousands of better qualified people, but they're there because of, again, race, gender quotas, or they just tamely, like zombies, tick the checklist in front of them and those sorts of things. But what happens when an over-promoted and underqualified person, particularly someone who's maybe got a bit of vanity, they fancy themselves as hot shit, but particularly where they get promoted, but the people reporting to them are better qualified. Now, the over-promoted sort of person, be it a man or a woman or black or white, it doesn't really matter. Increasingly, it's women and black and brown people being involved here, but they want to, and the subcontinent people are particularly bad for this. They want to pretend that they're heavy hitters and they're big time players. They know they're not. They know they've been over-promoted. They know they've just been gifted this gig, but they want to pretend that they're heavy shit. They've told all their relatives, "Oh, guess what? I'm the manager." So they want to sort of fantasize and act out the part that they're now, they've made it. But the people around them and the people who report to them, maybe the two ICs or the direct reports that come into them, they're much better qualified. They really do have the credentials. And what happens then is these people get really paranoid, sort of insecure. What they try and do, they can't compete on qualifications. They can't compete on credentials. They can't compete on experience. They can't compete on achievements. They can't compete any of these things. So they have to try and find a plane that they can, an artificial sort of altar that they can compete on. So they try and establish moral supremacy over a form of moral supremacy, I guess, over the people that report to them. And this is done in a variety of ways. They'll come and see me in my office. And so the person comes in, sit down. Okay, you want to bring me up to date on what you're up to? So the person says, well, I handed in my report, every Monday. I want to hear it from you. Okay, well, so what you're saying is, and then they try and establish this form of moral superiority just by treating their direct report, with contempt, or treating them as if they're a child. That's one of the favourites. You try and turn it into an adult to child sort of conversation, and if the person doesn't respond well to it, then you can say they're intractable and they shouldn't be on your team, not a team player. And if they go along with it and grovel and all that sort of thing in front of you, then you've established a moral superiority just by treating them badly. Or they hand in their report and without even reading it, they'll go back and say, it's not good enough, do it again, and I want it on my desk in an hour. And these sort of things. And these are all plays and ploys just to establish moral superiority. Now, in the case of when a qualified manager or qualified executive is there, who is confident in there and assured by their own abilities, and of course, deriving this principally from achievements and being accountable for those achievements, then there's a difference. And just in my case, at least, what I do would be to, and I've had people work alongside me who've been really well qualified. They could have done my job. It was accident of timing that I got the job and they didn't, or that sort of thing. So rather than try and reduce them or treat them with contempt or just with petty sort of silly nonsense, I try and say, well, these are the challenges we've got. These are the objectives we're trying to achieve. These are the resources we have. This is where do you think you can contribute the most to achieving these objectives? Let's you and I share these goals together and see what we can do. And so the guide say, well, I'm good at doing A and B and or X and Y or something like that. And I'd say, all right, then, well, you go ahead and do it. Let me know what you're doing and keep me up to date in case I get asked, in case the CEO comes around the corner and asks me. But other than that, go ahead. If you need anything, you need me to sign anything off, let me know. Let's talk about it if there's any requirement. Otherwise, we're both pursuing the same objectives. And it's great to have someone of your ability sort of, working on the team and that sort of stuff. So that would be the idea, to share goals and to use their expertise to get the job done. And I found that was the best way to engage with people without diminishing them. And once you treat people with that sort of respect and that sort of indulgence, if you like, and probably more respect than indulgence, then they'll tend to confide in you and come to you saying, oh, gee, that problem's really difficult and I'm really struggling with this, or that worked out much better than I expected. I think we can move some of the budget from over there to here and things like that. And you can have those sort of higher level discussions without any pettiness or professional jealousy or childishness or this need to assert moral superiority. There's a natural, not superiority, but there's a natural superiority, if I can use that term, I'm not even sure it's the right word, that comes from achievements, credentials, qualification, that comes naturally from that. It's an organic thing. And those are the people you want managing place, not people who've got, no expertise and so on. But just to exacerbate the situation, the HR departments tend to see things in a very linear sense. So if they've got they've got to write up a job to advertise, it's typically the purview of the HR departments to write them up. They'll tend to write up an insane wish list type job description. You will have 3 degrees, 2 PhDs, a master's, and you will have, and you'll do this, and you'll have that, you'll have 99 years experience, and so on. Now, the job description or the qualifications requirement they write up, the person will be 1,000 times more qualified than the person they're reporting to. So you get all these high quality applicants coming in who come close to meeting that criteria, and they're going to report to someone who went to a 9th tier community college out in the middle of nowhere, and there's just a complete mismatch. That guy's not going to hire a qualified person. And there's one sort of underqualified guy was telling me, he said, I got all these really, really top flight resumes coming in that HR, response to the HR human resources advert that they put up. And he said, I just threw them all in the bin. I just didn't do anything with them. I just said nobody was suitable and managed to delay it long enough so no one got hired. And so he deliberately subverted the system. But HR, instead of looking at the practicality of, what sort of person is going to fit in here, what level of qualification in order to work with this underqualified boss. We need to work around that. But instead, they have this idiotic assumption that the boss is the most highly qualified person in the universe, and therefore equally, highly qualified people can come in and report directly to. But it doesn't work that way, especially not with an over promoted and underqualified guy. So this asserting moral superiority, this petty asserting of moral superiority, is something that I'm seeing more and more now, and seeing it all around, and particularly this attempt to bully and intimidate and harass people, the better qualified people, by the underqualified people. And it's the it's like the taking over of the political class by all these zombie morons that are all trying to fillet the globalists. It's the same sort of thing, really. We're just getting more and more underqualified people going in to business and in business positions, and so this petty bullying and asserting of moral superiority is becoming more and more widespread. In fact, if you go into an organisation that's got signs on the wall everywhere and on their website, we don't tolerate bullying, we've got our policy on bullying, then you know for sure that it's going to be the worst fucking place for bullying. And I've noticed that too. But that's my take on this subject. That pettiness of asserting moral superiority is becoming worse. We even get it from the Democrats when they do their lecturing of white supremacy and all this sort of stuff. It's almost the same. So anyway, you've been with Tassus today, your Pushback channel, and thank you for listening.